Hi, everybody, and welcome back to The Parent Solution. This is episode 20 today, and it's a special one. This is another Q&A session. This is our second Q&A session where I answer direct questions from podcast listeners. So a couple of weeks ago, I was contacted by one of my listeners here, and it was actually through Instagram, of all things, through my social media. And this listener had a question. I think they expected it to be rhetorical on my end, or perhaps, they meant it as a more challenging philosophical question. It definitely sparked some discussion. We had quite the chat, and it was something that was very good. So I thought that I would share it with you guys, because if one person is going to ask this question, other people are going to ask it as well. For my part, I don't really leave questions undiscussed or unanswered. I was famous in Teachers College for always thinking the alternative way and taking the alternative route and asking the hard questions. I might not always have a solidified answer, but I definitely don't shy away from conversations or from uncomfortable or fringe topics. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. So this particular question was along the lines of how I actually expected education to start or bring about or further social change. As in, did I expect the system to begin sort of churning out these independent warriors, particularly with the current state of the world? So the short answer to that is no. The current public education system is not designed to create independent thinkers or strong-minded individuals. If we look at this from a neutral and an educational perspective, it's easy to understand why that's the case, because the public system is not designed to nurture these sorts of traits in children. Now, that's not anybody's fault per se. It's just the way that the system was set up. So let's back up a moment, because some context is necessary for the purpose of schooling to be understood. School, as we know it in the modern day and age today, was quote-unquote invented in the 1830s, and it officially got underway in the 1840s. So things like reading and writing and mathematics were core subjects. Where do you think the saying that reading, writing, arithmetic came from? If you imagine life in the 1830s and the 1840s, the vast majority of the population were farmers, right, or merchants, and they lived a much more agrarian lifestyle than we do today. The majority of students in school were males, and a lot of them only went to a certain grade level before dropping out. And the reason for that was that they either had to take care of their current family or to support their current family, or to start a new family of their own. So because of the nature of life itself in the 1800s, and really even into the 1900s before the Industrial Revolution got underway, there was no sort of social framework provided within which to teach students these sorts of skills, right? Your reading, your writing, and your math. It was really, quite simply, just teaching them how to read, how to write, and how to solve math equations. There was no level of higher thinking. There's no supposition of intended narratives. It was math, it was reading, and it was writing. There was no extra fluff, no extra narrative. It was education at its most bare, the logistics of just language and mathematical concepts. So if you fast forward to today, no longer do we have the bare minimum of educational requirements or teachings. Today, we've got additional teachings, we have more courses, more classes, and definitely more creative outlets that allow students the opportunity to explore their passions and interests in private schools or with alternative educational options, because most of these things are not available in public school. And so the vast majority of students do not actually have access to creative or additional learning options that are going to support their preferences or their hobbies or their specializations. So this question, if we look at this question a little bit closer, how will education bring about social change? Change happens when individuals are unsatisfied or are dissatisfied or discontent, whatever you want to say, with the status quo. You have to think that if a child doesn't even know that options outside the status quo exist, then of course they're not going to be unsatisfied or discontent, because they won't know that there's another option besides status quo for them to choose from. So there's an old adage that says what you don't know won't hurt you, and it definitely does not hold true in the educational space, because when educators are doing what they do best, which is educating, they are hopefully instilling the value of learning itself and teaching learning as a part of the process of life, not as a milestone to be achieved. Education brings about social change because hopefully, as teachers, we've ignited a fire to learn and to ask questions constantly and consistently and critically. We've taught to never stop asking questions, to never be satisfied with just one answer. As an educator and or a teacher, your job is to empower students to see that there are additional options other than what they've been conditioned for that are available to them, because that's where all change begins. Seeing that there's a possibility for something outside the realm of these clearly defined boundaries. So if you've sat and listened this far, thank you. I appreciate your time and attention. If you don't know where to start with this sort of idea, and you don't know how to spark this kind of consistent drive for learning, we are happy to help. Get in touch with us and we'll help your child get on and stay on the road to success. This is The Parent Solution, your one-stop shop for all things educational.